Welcome, you curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into something. Well, something more than just your average diplomatic visit. Picture this. It's August 23rd, 2025. Dhaka's main airport, Hazrat Shahjalal International, is buzzing, and stepping onto the tarmac is Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar. It's the first time someone at his level has visited from Pakistan in, 13 years. A truly rare moment and deeply symbolic, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. 13 years is a long gap in diplomacy, especially between neighbors, even complicated neighbors like these two.
So our mission here is to, unpack what this visit really means. It's not just handshakes and photos. We're talking about a journey through decades of, frankly, unresolved pain, a real balancing act involving history, money, and the shifting sands of geopolitics between Bangladesh and Pakistan.
Right. There are so many layers.
Exactly. We'll peel back those layers. The deep wound of the 1971 Liberation War, Bangladesh's very firm demands apology, reparations, and Pakistan's, let's say, nuanced responses.
Nuanced is one word for it. Evasive might be another, depending on who you ask.
True. But then there's the fascinating part, the surprising economic cooperation that seems to be budding, and of course, the bigger picture. What does this mean for India? For China?
The regional implications are huge.
Our goal is basically to give you a shortcut to understanding this really complex, maybe pivotal moment for both countries and South Asia as a whole.
And what's really striking, as you said, is just how rare this level of engagement has become. Dar's arrival is the first big visit since 2012. That was when Hina Robani Kar, Pakistan's foreign minister back then, invited Sheikh Hasina. But this time, it's happening under completely different circumstances in Bangladesh itself.
Right, and this is where the plot really thickens, isn't it? Because Dar isn't visiting Sheikh Hasina's longstanding government. Bangladesh is now under an interim government led by Chief Advisor Muhammad Yunus.
That's the key context.
This big shift happened after Sheikh Hasina's Awami League regime was ousted, you remember, August 5th, 2024, following that huge student-led uprising. And that change, it's totally reshaped Bangladesh's foreign policy, especially cooling those historically very close ties with India.
It absolutely has. And this upheaval in Dhaka, it's unexpectedly opened a strategic door for Pakistan.
Yeah.
It's a real chance for them to try and rekindle things with the nation that used to be East Pakistan. Something few people probably saw coming just a year ago.
It's almost ironic, in a way.
It is. And remember, this visit was actually meant to happen earlier, back in April 2025. But it got delayed because of a terrorist attack in Jammu and Kashmir, which of course spiked India-Pakistan tensions again. It just shows how fragile the whole regional situation is.
So against this backdrop, shifting power, old wounds, regional tensions, what did Dar actually do on the ground? What was the agenda?
Well, his schedule was pretty packed, especially on August 24th. He had key meetings with Chief Advisor Yunus, naturally, also with the Foreign Affairs Advisor, M. Tawheed Hossain. And interestingly, he also met leaders from major opposition parties.
Oh, like who?
The Bangladesh Nationalist Party, the BNP, which is a major player. Also the Islamist Party, Jamaat-e-Islami, and the newer National Citizen Party, the NCP. The main point of all these talks was, strengthening ties, trade, culture, diplomacy, a pretty bright effort to re-engage across the board.
Okay, but to really get the weight of this visit, we have to talk about 1971. That huge, unavoidable shadow over everything. For anyone listening who might not know the full history, 1971 isn't just a date for Bangladesh. It was a brutal 9-month liberation war.
Against Pakistani forces, yes. Supported by the Indian Army, which ultimately led to Bangladesh's independence.
And the cost. It's just horrifying.
It really is staggering. We're talking estimates of over 3 million people killed, and more than 300,000 women subjected to horrific sexual violence by Pakistani troops and their local allies, the Razakars, the al-Badr militias.
That's why Bangladesh's demands for justice are so deeply felt, so consistent.
Exactly. They're incredibly clear on what they expect. 3 core things.
Go on.
First, a formal apology from Pakistan for the 1971 atrocities, they call it genocide, point blank. Second, financial reparations. Specifically, $4.52 billion their share, they argue, of assets from before 1971, plus another $200 million in aid meant for cyclone victims in 1970 that, never arrived.
Okay, apology, reparations. What's the third?
The third is the repatriation of over 300,000 stranded Pakistanis. These are mostly Urdu-speaking Biharis who stayed in Bangladesh after the war and are still kind of in limbo.
And the current government is pushing this hard.
Foreign Affairs Advisor Tawheed Hossain put it very clearly. He said dealing with these issues is critical for building a, quote, solid foundation for the relationship. He admitted, 5 decades of problems won't disappear overnight, but he stressed how candid the talks were, frank, open, which in itself is maybe progress.
Maybe. So Bangladesh's position is crystal clear. How does Pakistan respond? Dar's version of history seems different.
Very different. He basically maintained that the 1971 issues were in fact resolved, twice. First, he said, through those tripartite talks with India and Bangladesh back in '74. And second, during President Musharraf's visit to Dhaka years ago.
Musharraf expressed regret, didn't he? But no formal apology?
Exactly. Regret, yes. Apology, no. And Dar's assertion that it's all settled, let's just say it's met with a lot of skepticism, maybe even anger in Bangladesh. It shows a fundamental clash in how they even remember 1971.
A huge point of difference. Okay, but connecting this back, despite that massive historical weight, Dar's visit also seemed to signal, well, a mutual desire to move forward economically, culturally. There were actual agreements.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tangible steps were taken. They signed 1 formal agreement and 5 memoranda of understanding, MOUs. That's a clear signal they're serious.
What kind of things did they cover?
Practical stuff, mostly.
Yeah.
Visa exemptions for diplomats, cultural exchanges planned out to 2028, cooperation between their foreign service training academies. They also set up a joint trade and investment group. That sounds promising.
And cooperation between think tanks, too.
Right. More use between Pakistan's Institute of Strategic Studies Islamabad and Bangladesh's BS. And also between their official news agencies, APP and BSS. It really shows a push to connect on multiple levels, especially economically and in terms of information flow.
Which suggests real economic ambition. Both sides seem to know their current trade, what was it, $865 million, is nowhere near its potential.
Far below it. Pakistan's Commerce Minister Jam Kamal Khan was also in Dhaka, having talked specifically about reviving that old Bangladesh-Pakistan Joint Economic Commission. It's been dormant for ages. And setting up a new Trade and Investment Commission, that signals a serious push, not just symbolic gestures.
Are we seeing concrete results already, or just plans?
No, there are concrete things happening. Pakistan supplied 50,000 tons of white rice to Bangladesh earlier in 2025. That's significant. Plus, those direct shipping links between Karachi and Chattogram, they're back up and running. That's basic infrastructure for boosting trade.
And Dar sounded optimistic.
Very. He talked about hitting $1 billion in annual trade. He mentioned approvals for 2 Pakistani airlines, Fly Jinnah and Air Seal, to start flights to Bangladesh. And back in January 2025, their chambers of commerce signed an MOU to create a joint business council. These are all practical steps towards closer economic ties.
Okay, let's zoom out again, because none of this is happening in isolation, rightly. There's the whole geopolitical chessboard. Under Sheikh Hasina, Bangladesh was very close to India for 15 years. Now, this new interim government seems to be pivoting towards Pakistan and China, too. That must be causing some concern in New Delhi. India sees Bangladesh as strategically vital.
Oh, absolutely. And you can already see signs of that tension. Remember India revoking that transshipment facility back in April 2025?
The one allowing Bangladesh to move goods through India?
That's the one. India said it was about logistical delays, but many read it as a signal of displeasure with Dhaka's new foreign policy direction, a sign of the growing chill.
And some analysts are calling this Bangladesh-Pakistan warming trend tactical.
Yes, like Aisha Siddiqa, the Pakistani academic. The argument is it's partly about balancing India's influence in the region, a strategic countermove.
And there's military cooperation, too.
There are reports. A Pakistani training proposal, apparently accepted by Bangladesh's army chief last November, plans for a joint naval exercise, Amman 2025, in Karachi. These aren't small things. They suggest a potentially significant shift in alignments.
So is it just balancing or something deeper? What do Bangladeshi diplomats say?
They frame it as pragmatic, driven by economic opportunity. And you can see why. Look at the numbers. In 2023-24, only 1% of Bangladesh's imports came from Pakistan. Compare that to over 26% from China, over 14% from India. There's huge room for growth with Pakistan, and Pakistan offers access to markets in Afghanistan and Iran. That's a real draw for Bangladeshi businesses, regardless of geopolitics, a practical move.
Okay, pragmatism on one side, but let's circle back to that core issue, the 1971 apology demand. It just won't go away, will it? For the government or the public?
No, it's fundamental. The Awami League, now in opposition, their condemnation was sharp. They said, and I'm quoting here, without recognition of genocide, normalization is betrayal. Strong words.
And other parties?
Leaders from Jamaat Islami and the NCP said similar things. They urged Pakistan to address the issue directly if they genuinely want a better relationship. It's tied to this deep national trauma. For so many Bangladeshis, this isn't abstract history. It feels incredibly current. It's a human need for acknowledgement.
So why is Pakistan so reluctant to offer that formal apology? What's their calculation?
Well, it's complicated. Partly domestic politics, partly geopolitics. Some commentators in Pakistan, like retired Major Ikram Sehgal, actually argue Bangladesh should also acknowledge violence against Biharis during the war. They push for a kind of symmetry of victimhood.
Which just feels more mistrust, I imagine.
It certainly doesn't help. And then you get articles in Pakistani media, like that one in the Catchline in August 2025, titled, "East Pakistan Must Return." That kind of thing understandably sparks real fear in Bangladesh about Pakistan's ultimate intentions. Adds statements from some Pakistani military figures about maybe using Bangladesh as a base against India. Well, it deepens the suspicion.
He sounds like a minefield, yet Dar himself sounded quite conciliatory during the visit.
He did. He urged both sides to take a forward-looking approach to avoid being fixated on the past. He talked about shared goals, invited Bangladeshi groups to visit Pakistan. He pointed to restarting Foreign Secretary-level talks in April 2025 as a positive sign. But how realistic is forward-looking when the past feels so unresolved for one side?
That really is the crux of it, isn't it? Because for many in Bangladesh, 1971 is personal. The apology isn't about revenge, it's about validation.
Exactly. And public opinion is mixed. You have some people looking at it pragmatically. Economic benefits are real. They might compare it to, say, how Vietnam and the U.S. reconciled after their war. But others, especially maybe younger generations, worry. They fear that moving on without justice for 1971 could somehow erode Bangladesh's identity, what the nation stands for. It's a tough balancing act.
So when the dust settles from Dar's visit, what we see are these two nations really standing at a crossroads. The agreements, the economic talk that signals a definite willingness to move forward. But the unresolved ghosts of 1971, that's a huge hurdle. You can't just ignore it.
It's an incredibly delicate position for Bangladesh's interim government. They've got intense pressure at home for justice, for recognition, but they also see the pragmatic need for regional cooperation, for economic growth, and for Pakistan. It seems they need to grapple with their history in a way that goes beyond diplomatic niceties or just expressing regret. It requires a more genuine engagement with that past.
And the ripple effects, they're potentially massive. India's watching closely, nervously perhaps. China's influence is growing. This Dhaka-Islamabad rapprochement could genuinely reshape alliances across South Asia, change the whole dynamic.
Absolutely. So the question for you, listening to this, is where does this lead? As we reflect on Dar's visit, will these talks spark a real thaw, a healing, or is it just a tactical pause in a very long, very difficult relationship? How will the ghosts of 1971 continue to shape the future for these two nations and really for the whole region as they try to navigate this path forward?
Something to definitely keep thinking about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive through a complex moment in history and politics. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.